Hello, everybody. Susan Kellner with Dawning Visions Hypnosis. And today we have a really important subject for the masses in America, particularly. You know, for too many years, decades, and it's getting worse these days, is this habit that people have of diagnosing themselves with ADD, OCD, depression, etc., etc., etc. Worse, they go ahead and try to diagnose all the people in their lives to find out what's wrong with them. Now, I understand why people want to do this. It's to get some kind of deeper understanding as to what may be going on with themselves and other people. But I have a few things to tell you. First of all, the rest of the world doesn't do this behavior. They don't. This is for Americans only. Why is there so much crap out there on the internet about narcissism? Narcissism affects a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of people if you look at the true diagnosis of what it is. And we're all narcissists to one degree or another because we all have self-interest. If we didn't, we'd be dead. So can we just be honest with ourselves that it is not fair, it's not right to go ahead and label every person you know with some kind of mental illness, especially when you have not had the training to know what the hell it is that you're labeling. And for your information, the DSM, from where all these labels come from, as far as I could discern, writing too many papers in my master's programs, one of them on this very subject, has no empirical evidence behind it whatsoever. The same people who talk about everything has to be evidence-based. There is no evidence regarding these labels. It's a bunch of people who are members of the American Psychiatric Association who get together, they split up the categories of mental illness, and they rate the symptomology that can be observed, and that is what becomes the diagnoses. It's all very subjective, and this is why even they don't know how to appropriately diagnose many of the patients, because there is so much overlap between the different diagnoses. What is the difference between, I don't know, a schizophrenic and a bipolar with psychotic symptoms? Or bipolar and a manic depressive or bipolar? Depending on what year you're diagnosed. Because manic depression used to be what bipolars were known as before bipolar 1 and 2 came into being. And what's the difference between a bipolar 1 and a bipolar 2 anyway? And what is the difference between a person going through normal sadness and grieving versus someone who is actually having major depressive symptoms or dysthymia? Or manic depression, bipolar versus cyclothymia? Do you understand that there are so many nuances in these diagnoses that it becomes very difficult to be able to diagnose a person, especially when they have more than one diagnosis? And when I first got into mental health, let me tell you something. I was working at the Gathering Place, which was a clubhouse for mentally ill adults, 19 and over, and they were there because they had not just one mental illness, in most cases, 2, 3, or more, and sometimes with drug addiction on top of it, which is now in the DSM as well as a mental illness, along with other things. And then we have to think about what has been taken in and out of the DSM over the years. It used to be that homosexuality was a mental illness, and now it's no longer considered a mental illness. So who's making these decisions and why? Stop being in this trap. It happens because you see so many medications being advertised to you all day and all night long on TV, on the internet, wherever, because the pharmaceutical companies spend much more money on advertising than they do on any kind of development of any new drugs. That is a fact. And what I'm really here to tell you is this. If you're in a relationship, as I was explaining to one of my clients, I don't know, an hour ago, who sent me, 8 videos on narcissism in females. If you know you're in a toxic relationship, that's all you need to know. If the person makes you feel bad after you've been with them or while you're with them, that's not a person you want to be around. And that means you have to figure out how to extricate yourself from that relationship. Now, if you're married to that person and you have children, it becomes a much more complicated situation than if you're merely dating someone or if they're just merely a friend or acquaintance. But that's all you need to know. You don't need a diagnosis. What you need is to know who are the healthy people to be around who make you feel well, who make you feel good about being you, who make you laugh, or you end up laughing just because of the way that your chemistry works together. Or they're intelligent and they have ideas that they want to share with you. I have a poet friend. We used to spend hours and hours just talking about ideas and philosophy and things of this nature. It was great. These are some of my favorite conversations ever. We weren't talking about other people. We're talking about ideas, things that were happening in the world, things bigger than us and our little teeny weeny lives. And there's other people who are into the arts, and they're fascinating too because they have a different way of looking at the world than other people. And their job is to actually bring out the emotions of others, as I pointed out to my ex-husband when we went to go see an Ansel Adams exhibit of his fantastic photography. In the second half of the exhibit, that's exactly what Ansel said. Real art brings out people's emotions. There you go. So I want you to stop labeling people with mental illness. I want you to stop labeling yourself with mental illness. If you think you have a mental illness, go to a provider who actually has at least the licensure to hopefully know what the hell they're doing to help you figure it out. And in most cases, medications are not the way to go because they change your brain. And if you have a kid who's being diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, and they want to put them on meds, ask yourself if it's normal for a 3 or 4-year-old little boy to be running around. Yes, it is. Even at 6, 7, 8 years old when they're supposed to be stuck in a classroom because there's no such thing as recess or gym anymore in too many schools to allow them to get their natural energy out. And I'll tell you this right here, right now. My mother knew that my brother, older brother, was sick because he had no energy. He didn't even have the energy my older sisters had. Took 1.5 years to find out he had leukemia. We don't want our kids to not have energy. That's unhealthy. It means there's something wrong with them. Quite the opposite of all these people being labeled, kids being labeled with ADD. And then you have to ask yourself, what is going on with their brains when they're not even developed yet and they're put on this crap, generally for the rest of their lives? People, we have to think more critically about what we are doing. Chemical restraint is not the way to go. That's the technical term. And by the way, it's illegal to do that to people with mental illness, at least in the state of Massachusetts, has been for years. That's the way they used to treat people. Give them so many chemicals, antipsychotics or whatever, so that they were just sort of barely knew who they were or what they were doing. So they wouldn't act out. It's inhumane. That's what it is. About helping people regulate their emotions like they used to do in the old days. How about helping people learn how to have safe emotional boundaries? How about being able to speak your mind and let people know, hey, you have some stuff to talk to you about, and talk to them about the things that they said or the behaviors they're doing and why they are hurting your feelings and what they can do to change it. And if they're not willing to change it or they're unable to, because a lot of people are unable to because they are incapable for whatever reasons, it's time to move on to next. Find someone else. That is my message for you today. I want you to stop labeling people with mental illness. Just stop. And I want you to go deep down inside yourself and just ask yourself, is this a person I enjoy being with? Is this a person who helps me grow? Is this a person who adds to my life? Or is this a person who is degrading, dismissive, neglectful, hateful, condescending, sarcastic toward me? If that person is like that, you dump them out of your life. It's really that simple. No diagnosis necessary. As always, I thank you for spending your time with me. Till next time. Bye-bye.